Hey guys, Dr. Dex here. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to talk about 5 things that separate a professional deck builder from an amateur, and maybe let some of you first-time deck builders out there give you some tips and tricks on how to up your game a little bit. One thing that separates a professional from amateur is joist protection or joist tape. So when we're building with a wood frame, we always protect the tops of our framing, because over time, when 2 deck boards are sitting on top of a joist, or if they're going like this and the joist is going like this, and you have 2 deck boards, everything, the sediment that goes in between the deck boards sits on top of the framing. That is the first place that your deck is gonna rot. I don't care if the decking or the framing is pressure treated or not, it's gonna deteriorate faster there. We have a great example because we did a remodel on our current deck and we kept all the joists. So you can actually see the evidence of where the water was coming through and actually leaving an imprint on the framing. On this particular build, before the decking was installed, somebody put down some joist protection. It wasn't designed as joist protection. It's not UV stable. It was a product called Fortiflash, but it worked. It kept the joists in good shape. So we went in, after we took all the decking off and stripped all the joists and cleaned them all up, we installed a product called G-tape, which is a waterproof membrane tape. We put that over the top of the Fortiflash. We sealed all the old holes from the old decking screws. And then when we put our new screws in, it also sealed those up as they went in. So let's take a look at that really quick and I'll show you what I'm getting at. Okay, so you can see underneath this deck that this deck's finished, and you can kind of see evidence of the old product over here. And you can also see where the old decking was dripping through the joists, okay, like all that old moss buildup. And you can see that the decking used to be a 3.5-inch wide deck board, and now it's a 5.5-inch wide deck board. And so when you look at that, where those green areas are, that's at the top, at the very top of that joist, that's where it's gonna break apart first, where it's going to deteriorate the most first. And it always starts there. Whenever we tear off old rotten decks, that's the first place that goes in the joist system. So we're trying to protect that with our waterproof membrane tape. So we went through, and you can see the black, anything that's black up there is new, and that's UV stable, so it's not going to deteriorate or degrade in the sunlight like the old stuff did. So we have new protection, and it also kind of holds it out a little bit so that the water kind of comes around that, and then it kind of deflects off of that and then drops to the ground. So something that I think is definitely would separate you from an amateur would be to apply some joist tape. Any flat blocking especially that you happen to do because of surface borders or posts, railing for your posts for the rail system, any flat blocking for that, definitely tape over that. It's just going to make it last a lot longer. Even if that tape gets compromised, it's only going to be compromised in a certain spot, and the material that you're using for your frame probably is pressure treated, which is great, and it can get wet. But if you just protect it with a little bit of tape, it's just going to last many, many more years than it would if you didn't use it. So now that we've talked about joist tape, probably the next thing that I think separates a pro from an amateur is the fascia, the trim that you do on the outside of the deck. So when you look at the deck from a distance, it looks finished. So we can do an example on that if you take a look at this deck over here. So we like to cover all of the ends of our outside joists, outside rim joists, the belly boards outside of anything that goes around the outside of the deck, including the staircase. We like to cover it up. So all the fascia boards, regardless of how you attach them or how you seam those together, it just looks really nice when you have a complete cover of the outside of the deck. So we may G-tape the outside rim joist of the deck, but we also will cover it completely with a corresponding color. It could be the same color as a decking, or in this particular case, it's an alternate color. So I call that an alternate colored fascia when we're installing it. And this one's Dark Hickory by TimberTech. And in the same token, another thing that you can do to differentiate yourself as a pro or maybe not an amateur, is how you fasten the deck together. So you can see over here, We use a lot of a product called Cortex, where we face screw the material and then we use matching plugs that disappear into the product so that you can't really see them. So this board is completely fastened. It's not gonna go anywhere. It's all, and I use all stainless steel in my work. So you can see right here, I've got them in my pocket. Basically, when we're in finish mode, I have these all the time. So using a high quality fastener is going to differentiate you from your competitors as well, or from being an amateur, is that we use high grade stainless steel screws. These ones are color matched because there are certain parts of the deck that you cannot just Cortex because of the thickness of the material. So as you can see on this lower part of this fascia, this material is thinner than this material. So if I'm gonna have to put a face screw in something, I'm gonna make sure that they line up really nice, that they're square, so that when you line them up, that they line up and they look nice. You know, they're at a 90-degree angle to something, and that I put them at the proper depth so they don't look like they're overdriven or underdriven, which again is another tip that you want to think about, is like trying to keep all your deck screws. If you're going to have exposed screws, make them so they look nice and they're nice and flush with your material. All right, another thing that'll set you apart is your fit and finish work. So when we install decking, we try to create unique patterns. I'm not a crazy miter guy. I don't do a ton of miters. So I like to do a lot of butt joints and herringbone patterns and things like that, because I know I do a lot of PVC decking, and PVC will move on you. There's some guys that will pocket miter and glue and screw and all that, and that's great. I just have a particular style, and this is my style, is something like this, where you have boards running in certain directions and all the gaps are equal and they're spaced equally and they look wonderful, and then everything's Cortex, so it's a hidden fastened look. All these deck boards are down and they're not going to move around, and I really like the way that looks. My clients are very happy with it. So just something, take a little bit more time and make sure you're getting those miters or those butt joints or whatever equally gapped, and that everything is at the right space and that everything's nicely filed and things like that. And sometimes it's the small details that really set you apart. The last thing I'm gonna talk to you about, and it's one of the most important things that you can do when building your deck, is your house prep and flashing. It's amazing what $5 worth of metal can do or not do for the protection of your wall of your home. Okay, this is called Z-metal, and what it does is it goes up behind your siding, it can go over the top of your ledger, and then it lips over. So the water, once your decking's in, and this is up here, the water, if it finds a way through this path, it comes back through, out, and down. This deck has flashing installed. I don't know if you can see it up here, but that white strip up above is the lip, is this lip right here, okay? So if you properly flash your deck, it's going to provide many years of moisture-free issues. I've actually had to do $10,000 worth of repairs before because somebody didn't use this before they put their deck on, and all the water just came in from the weather, where this would normally keep the water out, and it just went behind the deck boards and behind the ledger and into the wall, and it rotted out the entire wall of studs, and all the siding had to come off. All the sheetrock on the inside of the house had to come off. All the studs had to come out. We had to jack up the house, install new studs, put new siding, plywood, insulation. It was a nightmare. You know, invest in I think it's $10 a stick for a 10-footer or less. So definitely use flashing, and that'll definitely differentiate you from being an amateur, is making sure you do proper house prep. Take your time, make sure that you pull all the nails, get a nice flat surface to start with before you start building your deck. I know the fun part is building and framing and all that, but if you don't spend the time to do it proper, you may regret it in the future. All right, guys, so that's 5 ways to separate professionals from amateurs. If you like this video or maybe you learned something, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon if you want to be notified when we're putting out new content. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.